Hello, friends. So, we have some news. Joe and I are going to start an entirely new adventure. Pretty big one, I think. And we wanted to give you all a heads up and bring you along on this journey as we prepare in the next 5 weeks to bring an end to our South Africa and particularly our Cape Town chapter as we make our way over to, drumroll please, France. Yes, one might say, but Keith, you've already lived there. And one might say, you and Joe have lived in a lot of places. Why not just settle down in America where you haven't been for the last 7 years? But this is a particularly interesting and exciting time for us. And I just want to give you a heads up as to how we got here. So in order to start this story, we've got to go all the way back to about January of 2025. And we all know that there were some big events that took place in that month. We just didn't really quite know how big those events were going to be in terms of how they affected our day-to-day lives. So after January, we were sitting in our beautiful apartment in the waterfront of Cape Town, and we got the news that the administration was deciding to put an end to the U.S. Agency for International Development, which has been a giant in both mine and Joe's careers for the last 15 years. To pull this rug out from underneath all of us really has been shocking. We are still probably processing this fact along with thousands of other people, both in the US and around the world. And it just kind of meant that we needed to pause and reflect on where we were in our lives. It's also just sort of thinking ahead and wondering what will our career fields look like in a year from now, 2 years from now, because we're seeing the immediate effects, but we don't really understand what might be the ripple effects of such a change. And so, yeah, I think we just decided this could be an opportunity to diversify our skill sets, to gain new experience, to meet new people, to just push ourselves to think differently, to feel differently, to move differently. Hopefully this helps us evolve and come back to a career field that, you know, we will have added value to. Let's just let it settle. Let's see how it grows and changes while we're also out there trying to grow and change. And hopefully these two divergent paths can come back together in a new and interesting and creative and productive way. So after the initial shock of it all wore off, Joe and I decided to try to think critically about how we could leverage this opportunity instead of feeling like we were controlled by it. We thought, what are things that we have always wanted to do, but we haven't either had the time, the freedom, or the resources to do so? And both of us decided to tap into our creative pursuits. Now, I know that people think I have a lot of hobbies, but the common thread that has sort of been a constant in my life ever since high school has been food. And particularly my love of making food for other people. And so when I started to think about what this time could mean for me, I thought back to when I was living in my tiny little apartment in Midtown Manhattan in, I'd say, 2008, where I was very close to pulling the trigger on going to culinary school. I had applied to a couple of different places. I had started filling out my uniform request sheet. My parents, I will say, we're not the biggest fans of that idea. They sent me Anthony Bourdain's book, Kitchen Confidential, in hopes that it would turn me off of culinary school, but in fact, it just made me more motivated and excited to do so. So that didn't work, but I have always really taken my parents' opinions to heart, and so I sought out other opportunities. To their dismay, that other opportunity was Peace Corps. And so I think they kind of regretted not steering me in the direction of culinary school, but that's what I did, and that's what sort of set me off in my entire last 15, 16-year career, grad school, living in Burkina Faso, traveling to many different countries in Africa, working in international public health. It can be traced back to that moment in my apartment in Midtown Manhattan. But ever since that day, that little voice in the back of my head is always asking myself, what if? What what is my sliding doors? What would my life look like had I actually followed through on submitting that culinary school application? And so when this opportunity came up, that was really the first thing that came to mind. Food and serving food for others, and particularly baking, has never really gone away. And so when this opportunity for deciding on what we wanted to do with our time because of this forced departure from South Africa, my very first thought obviously was pastry school. That's right, y'all. I am finally going to pastry school. And Joe, if you haven't been following me or him on social media in other ways, he has become this prodigious sculptor, this young ingenue in the sculpting scene. He's been doing it for about a year now at a wonderful studio in Cape Town called In Situ, with lovely teachers, lovely community, and it's really, really allowed him to blossom and to create this whole new skill set. Obviously, Joe has always been very artistic. He has painted and drawn figuratively, in terms of figurative sketching, figurative painting, not figuratively in terms of meaning. And yeah, he just wanted to kind of develop an entirely new application of that skill set through sculpting. And he has been incredible. I'm sure you can go either to my Instagram at Keith Mangum or Joe's at Joe Tyag to see some of the reels that either I have made or he has made that showcase some of his work. But it's pretty incredible, and I'm just so excited to see what he learns, how he grows, how his artistry changes, what his oeuvre will become in the long term, hopefully by being pushed and supported by an entirely new community of artists. Obviously, when I was thinking about where to go to pastry school, it had to be France, the home, the origin, the OG of pastry. And yeah, so it all came down to Paris, the culmination of what I wanted, what he wanted. Really, we found our home in a couple different programs in Paris. So we shall see. It's a big gamble. We are definitely pushing ourselves past our typical risk aversion and investing in what we believe are going to be very enriching experiences. We don't want to continue waiting for what might be the right time. Everything that's happening in the world is kind of suggesting to us the time where you can do something is the time when you should do something. So we're going to take that advice, and we are diving headfirst. So I wanted to start a little series of, I'm hoping, weekly vlogs that will document these last 5 weeks in Cape Town, as well as our transition through visiting family in the US for a couple of weeks, saying goodbye to some friends of ours in DC before we make the leap of faith and move to France. So I hope that you will follow us along in this journey. I'm sure there will be cameos from Joe and cameos from our little fluffy children, Tatum and Penny, for those of you who haven't met them. Please like and subscribe if you want to keep up to date on these videos. I obviously will be annoying all of my friends and family with updates along the way as well. And also, if you are from South Africa and you happen to stumble upon this video and it's within the month of May 2025, please comment below with some ideas of last-minute bucket list item things that we need to try to get done before we leave Cape Town, because there is just so much to see, and we would love to really pack it in before we head on our way over to the US and then ultimately to France. So I hope that you are excited about this as much as we are, and I cannot wait to give you guys the adventure as it develops. All right, I'll see you guys soon. Bye.